take a break for a moment and, first of all, commiserate with us in Nigeria about the passing of Prince Tony Momoh. Prince Tony Momoh, an Auchi prince, in fact, Yerima of Auchi, I believe. He passed on, an activist, a lawyer, a veteran journalist, and he was Minister of Information back in the day under the administration of Babangida, General Babangida. He died at 80 and 81. He died at 81. I suppose there are many things you could remember Prince Tony Momoh for. He was active in the CPC, the president's former party. When he died, he was a member of the APC. The president has sent his condolences. His president has spoke about his loyalty. The president said it's a rare event to find a person as loyal as Prince Tony Momoh, who has now passed on at the age of 81. We will be speaking. What do you remember most about him?
One of the exciting images of him in my younger years was the letter to my countrymen.
Yeah. As Minister of Information.
As Minister of Information. And it typically gave some balanced way of communicating with the citizens, especially demonstrating some sensitivity to the feelings of the citizens. Someone from government and the minister, for that matter, writing to the citizens. And he also played some major role towards the dying days of military regime in bringing the current dispensation, democratic dispensation into being. So he played some very key roles. And also rising all the way from being a journalist to going to study law. So he's one of the best brains in the country. And most importantly, the most recent was the interview he granted to the Vanguard on the 20th of last month.
Can you imagine?
Which was like a patent shot.
Can you imagine? And
one of my strong suggestion to policymakers and decision makers is let's go and take a further look. Because in Africa, it is always said that the last words of an elder has a lot of meaning. So if he has said decongest the political system, in fact, one of in direct reference, he said that 93 items on the exclusive list should be reduced to 24 so that the federation can work. He calls this a centralized system. So I think those pattern shots should be reevaluated, assessed. And the philosopher says an unexamined life is not worth living. So that could be a basis to re-examine some of the things that are wrong with our system. He was an elder statesman.
Indeed, elder statesman, nationalist, and even a humanist. We've used that term this morning on this program. In the course of this, you can even regard Prince Tony Momoh as a humanist. He was editor of the Daily Times, and that goes
general manager. He got to general manager actually.
Exactly, and we hope we'll be able to speak with some people who actually worked with him, COVID-19 and, studio protocols and all of that. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be able to get hold of, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, Richard Ikiebe, for instance. Richard Ikiebe, who now lectures at Pan-Atlantic University, worked with him, worked with him, I think, at the Daily Times, and then also as a special assistant when he was minister. So that it will be quite interesting to hear from Richard. But many people knew him. The man was a man of the people, and he was a prince of Auchi, and in that role, he was always seeking to bring up people that were...
The 165th child of his father. That was a very spectacular one. The 165th.
Thank you for that tidbit. These are societies and families of yore.
Yes.
165th child, of his parents. But he's the one that people, recall most, on a national scale. No doubt there are other children that also have made their own mark in the society, but Prince Tony Momoh, he does not just his family, but also Auchi, and also his state, Edo State. He does it very, very proud. He's known up and down the land, especially when it comes to journalism, his legal profession, work there. we don't know what led to his demise. I don't think that has been spoken about yet.
The reports suggest that he was ill. He's been ill for some time,
For a
but
while.
it was not associated with COVID-19 from the feedback. And his experience also mentioned that there have been a lot of positive tributes around him. So it also brings at a very important question: what shall we be remembered for?
Indeed.
Because gradually we all pass.
Indeed.
At one time or the other.
Let me see. I hear that we have our guests, our remote guests,
Okay.
now, and I believe Richard Ikiebe and Mr. Lanre Idowu. So good morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Okay.
Good morning.
Indeed.
Gary, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you very much for making the time for us. Let me start with you, if I could, Richard, because well, right now you lecture at the School of Media and Communications, Pan-Atlantic University in Lekki, but you've had a long association with the late Prince Tony Momoh. I believe starting from his time in Daily Times. Were you in Daily Times with him as well?
Yes, I was. I joined the Daily Times in '78 when he was already editor of the paper. Yes, I was with him at the Daily Times, and I was at the Daily Times for 4 years.
Okay, 78 to 82, you know.
78 to 82, halfway through that, well, 3/4 way through that, he was promoted and he became general manager, and Irabuchi took over the editorship from him, yes.
Yeah, yeah. What are the memories you have of Prince Tony Momoh? That would be very interesting to hear, seeing as you worked closely with him. And I know that you also worked with him when he was Minister of Information. Your fond memories?
Yes, I was his special advisor at the ministry from 86 to 90, again for another 4 years. He was a very unusual person. He is not the kind of person you meet every day. He was very comfortable in his own skin. He did not live to impress people. He has his own, you might say that Tony Momoh was a journalist philosopher. I think that is how I would describe him. Because he thought deeply and he spoke candidly. At the Daily Times, as everybody knows, he was one of the few editors who took, in any case, anything that Tony Momoh did, he put his whole being into it. And as editor, he took his position, his job very, very seriously. As minister, he took his work very, very seriously. Unfortunately, people tend to want to remember him for the letters, which were good, and they served a purpose at the time they were written. But I think what he should be remembered for was completely restructuring the information landscape under his ministerial portfolio, starting with the February 1987 Topo Badagry Conference on Policy on Information, which later would pave the way for private broadcasting. But for that conference, an organization like the TVC would probably exist, but probably in another form. So he really did some heavy lifting in restructuring the information landscape during his tenure, in public relations, advertising, you name it, media council, press council, Those were the kind of things that he applied his mind to.
Indeed.
He was a very, very forthright person, and he spoke his mind wherever you gave him the chance.
Okay. One moment, please. Let me ask Lanre Idowu, and thank you again, Lanre, for joining us, editor of Media Review. Lanre, your memories of the late Prince Tony Momoh, I'm sure there must be quite a few.
Well, thank you, Yori. Let me just start from where Richard stopped. Prince Tony Momoh, without any doubt, was one of the deepest thinkers that we have had as journalists in this country. He did everything that a journalist could do of his era. He was a sub-editor, he was a writer, he was an editor, he was a trainer, and he was an administrator. And finally became policy formulator, policy implementer, and all that. And he had so much love for the nation, he had so much love for the profession, and he was a man of standards who wanted to raise standards, who did not think anybody should just stroll into the media without requisite training. So he preached that, he worked for that, and as recent as last year, he was kind enough to write the preface to a book that we put together in partnership with the Guild of Editors to document the history of the Guild of Editors. Having been a past secretary, having been a past president, we thought that there was no other person better qualified for him to do that exercise. And you need to read it to understand the depth of his knowledge, the depth of his passion for the profession. I also recall that a few years ago at one of the conventions of the Guild of Editors in Lagos, he gave every participant a 4-volume book, Sterling Holding Encyclopedia of Mass Media and Communication. That is a set that would have cost each person nothing less than 50,000 naira. But he gave out as many as 200 copies, free. Mm-hmm. He didn't ask people to pay for it. Mm-hmm. He paid for it. He underwrote it. So this is an example of someone who believed that you cannot be a journalist, you cannot be a communicator without being informed yourself.
Indeed.
So
indeed,
those are the kind of things that I think we will miss.
And we thank you dearly, Mr. Lanre Idowu, editor, Media Review magazine. As indeed, we also thank Mr. Richard Ikiebe, who joined us from the School of Media and Communications at the Pan-Atlantic University in Lekki. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for sharing with us some of the impressions of that marvelous person, Prince Tony Momoh, Auchi Prince, that is now of blessed memory. And in our dying moments, coming back to studio, rich eulogies. This is the kind of thing, you can see he had a rich life. I like that he was referred to as something of a philosopher, a thinker,
which
journalist.
Is rare to find in
yes,
our time.
yes. And all of this he brought to bear. He was an author of many books, as you know, and as Mr. Lanre Idowu was pointing out there, quite generous. I myself am a beneficiary of some of the books that he would, just initial and send because he believed it was further educating and developing the craft. He was very, very particular about professionalism and all of that. A marvelous man. He will be missed sorely by his people and indeed by Nigerians. So we're going to have to leave it there unless you had any last word that you wanted to add.
It's always great to leave good legacies in the sands of times, because your work, especially the work you do for humanity, the good works, will speak after you have left.
Indeed.
That's a very important parting word, re-echoing what he said on the 20th of January.
Indeed. So, and as you were saying, you commend people to go research out that, was it Vanguard interview, that he did, yes. And, you know, people should just
see what and what we need to apply.
Yeah.
Because it's a stage.
Thank you very much, Pascal. Mr. Pascal Achinene, editor of... I beg an executive director, really,
Emergency Initiative.
Of, you know, exactly, Public Health Initiative. So thank you very much for coming on the program.
It's my pleasure for having me.
Indeed. And so that's our program today. I wish we had more time. We really wanted to get into this deeply, but it is what it is. See you tomorrow, God willing. Do everything you can to be safe from COVID-19. You know the routine by now. I'll see you tomorrow, God willing. Bye-bye for now. I'm Yori Folari.